Everyone remembers that Rome fell, but few ever stop to ask why. The real reasons weren't about invading armies or barbarian tribes storming the gates. No, Rome didn't collapse from the outside, it rotted from within. And if you look closely enough, you can see the same cracks spreading through America right now. The same pride, the same blindness, the same story playing out again, just with brighter lights, faster internet, and better suits. At the height of its power, Rome believed it was untouchable. Its leaders ruled half the known world. Its armies stretched from Britain to Egypt, and its currency was as good as gold. To the average Roman, the empire felt eternal, like the sun that rose every morning. But history is cruel to certainty, because one quiet day, without warning, everything that seemed permanent began to unravel. Sound familiar? Look around. Prices climb faster than paychecks. The cost of living bites harder every year, yet we're told everything's under control. The headlines distract us with endless noise, celebrity scandals, political drama, viral nonsense, while something deeper shifts beneath the surface. Most people can feel it, a sense that something enormous is changing, but nobody's saying it out loud. That's not paranoia. That's history whispering. Because Rome's story isn't ancient, it's a pattern, a cycle that repeats every time a nation grows too proud to see its own decay. And that's what makes this so unsettling. We're walking the same path they did, step for step. Back then, Roman citizens were confident, comfortable, and entertained. They trusted their leaders, their money, their military. Collapse? Impossible. Until the day it wasn't. Picture this: Rome in the 5th century, glittering marble, crowded marketplaces, chariots racing through the streets. Bread was cheap, shows were free, and no one believed the empire could ever die. But beneath the spectacle, the foundation was already crumbling. Their economy bloated, their army overextended, their leaders addicted to distraction and luxury. They thought their power made them immune to consequences. It didn't. Now, pause for a moment and think about America, the strongest military on earth, the world's reserve currency, a country so dominant that collapse sounds absurd. But history doesn't care about pride or politics. It only cares about patterns. And those patterns are back. The same financial decay, the same military overreach, the same obsession with entertainment to drown out the unease. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Rome's citizens didn't see it happening either. They were too distracted, too confident, too entertained. They mistook comfort for safety. We're doing the same thing now, scrolling, streaming, numbing, while the system that holds everything together quietly erodes. But here's where it gets fascinating. Every empire believes it's different. Rome believed it. Britain believed it. The Soviet Union believed it. And today, America believes it. Yet no empire in history has ever escaped the cycle. The names change, the technology changes, but the outcome never does. Still, there's a reason you're hearing this story again, not to scare you, but to wake you up. Because this isn't about ancient ruins or crumbling statues. It's about now. It's about recognizing the warning signs before they turn into headlines. The same three forces that hollowed out Rome, monetary decay, endless expansion, and distraction, are already in motion again. You can see them in every dollar that buys less, every war that costs more, and every hour lost to screens that feed us outrage instead of understanding. We're told it's all fine, that collapse only happens in history books, but that's what the Romans believed too. They thought they were exceptional, protected by destiny, blessed by the gods. They thought their empire would outlast time itself. And when the fall came, it didn't arrive with a single event. It came slowly, then all at once. So as you listen, ask yourself, What if history isn't just repeating, but accelerating? What if the next collapse doesn't take centuries, but a single lifetime? Because the more you look at Rome, the more you realize this isn't a story about the past. It's a reflection of the present, and maybe a preview of what's coming next. Rome believed it was eternal. So does America. But eternity, it turns out, has an expiration date. It always starts the same way, with money. Not armies, not politics, not even corruption. Every empire begins to die the moment its money stops being real. And in Rome, that moment came quietly, almost invisibly, under Emperor Nero around 64 AD. Back then, Rome's silver coin, the denarius, was nearly pure. It was trusted from Britain to Egypt, from merchants to soldiers. That small piece of silver wasn't just currency, it was a promise, a symbol of stability, of faith in the system itself. And then slowly, that promise was broken. Wars drained the treasury. Lavish projects, palaces, monuments, circuses devoured gold faster than taxes could replace it. The empire needed money, but it couldn't raise enough without revolt. So Nero did what desperate rulers always do. He cheated. He began shaving a little silver off the coins, mixing in cheaper metals like copper. Just a few percent at first. Who would notice? The stamp of the emperor was still there. The coin looked the same, but underneath the shine, its soul was gone. And once that line was crossed, there was no turning back. Every emperor that followed took a little more and then a little more. By the year 200, the denarius was barely half silver. By 265 AD, it was almost worthless, less than 5% real metal. People could still hold it in their hands, but the value, the trust, had vanished. Merchants refused to accept it. Soldiers demanded payment in gold or goods instead. Prices exploded. Trade broke down. The economy froze. But the worst part wasn't the inflation. It was the betrayal. The realization that the very empire people believed in had quietly stolen from them through their money. That's not just an economic collapse. It's a moral one. Because when the foundation of trust crumbles, everything built on it starts to fall. Now fast forward nearly 2,000 years. In 1971, President Nixon went on television and did something most Americans didn't understand at the time. He closed the gold window. Up until that moment, foreign nations could exchange US dollars for gold, the same way Rome's coins had once held silver. That tie to something real, something tangible, kept the system honest. But Nixon broke that link. Overnight, the dollar became paper, backed not by gold, but by government promises. Sound familiar? And just like Rome, once the tether was cut, the temptation was too strong to resist. The printing presses roared to life. Since 1971, the dollar has lost more than 85% of its purchasing power. Every year, it buys less. Every generation feels poorer. The money didn't disappear. It was diluted piece by piece until what was once solid became hollow. The Romans took 2 centuries to destroy their currency. America is doing it in decades. During the pandemic alone, the US printed over 40% of all dollars in existence in a single year. 40%. And we wonder why housing is unaffordable, groceries cost double, and saving feels impossible. Most people don't realize it, but inflation isn't an accident. It's a form of quiet theft, a tax that doesn't need a vote. You work, you save, and your government quietly makes your money worth less each year. That's exactly what Rome did right before the fall. And just like then, the average citizen doesn't see it happening until it's too late. Because debasement isn't just about coins or paper, it's about trust. Once a people stop believing that their money holds value, chaos follows. Rome's economy imploded, not because they ran out of silver, but because they ran out of faith. So ask yourself, what happens when the world stops believing in the dollar the way Rome's citizens stopped believing in the denarius? What happens when "in God we trust" no longer means trust in value? History's answer is always the same. The empire with the strongest army and the proudest people falls, not with a bang, but with the soft hiss of printing presses and the silent fade of trust evaporating into air. The death of money isn't a headline, it's a heartbeat slowing. Rome ignored the sound until it stopped. The question is, will we? Power always demands a price, and for empires, that price is almost always paid in blood and gold. Rome learned that the hard way. At its height, Roman legions stretched across 3 continents. From the deserts of Syria to the misty hills of Britain, the empire's banners flew everywhere. To the world, it looked unstoppable. To Romans, it felt eternal. But behind the glory, the numbers told another story. An empire bleeding itself dry just to hold the edges together. Every mile of conquered land needed garrisons. Every garrison needed soldiers. Every soldier needed food, weapons, armor, pay. By the 3rd century, over half of Rome's entire budget went to maintaining the military machine that kept the illusion of stability alive. The empire had reached a trap of its own making. Pull back and the borders collapse. Push forward and the treasury empties. Either choice led to ruin. Taxes soared. Provinces groaned under the weight of endless demands. Merchants were squeezed, farms abandoned, wealth confiscated in the name of defense. Rome wasn't expanding anymore. It was drowning in the cost of what it already owned. By the time the legions began mutinying over unpaid wages, the empire was too exhausted to recover. And when the real threats came, the Germanic tribes, the Persians, the revolts, it didn't collapse because it lacked courage. It collapsed because it lacked coin. Now look around today. America doesn't rule with legions and chariots, but the map looks eerily similar. Military bases scattered across the world, about 750 of them in more than 80 countries. A defense budget so massive, it dwarfs the next 10 nations combined: China, Russia, India, the UK, Saudi Arabia, France, Japan, Germany, South Korea. All together still spend less. The empire of our age doesn't call it conquest. It calls it security. But the cost is the same. In 2024 alone, the United States spent roughly $850 billion on defense. That's enough to rebuild every bridge, modernize every school, and erase chunks of the national debt every single year. Yet, most of that money goes not to protection at home, but to maintaining influence abroad. Troops stationed in deserts and jungles, fleets patrolling every ocean, endless missions that few citizens can even name. And the spending never stops. It's the same illusion Rome chased, the belief that power buys safety, that presence equals control. But strength without balance is a mirage. Every empire that stretched itself too far learned that the world isn't conquered once. It has to be conquered every day, paid for with resources that don't regenerate fast enough. The Soviet Union learned that lesson in the 1980s. Its economy buckled under military costs it couldn't sustain. America watched that collapse, promised it would never make the same mistake, and then did exactly that. Today, the Pentagon's reach is vast, but so is the debt. Every aircraft carrier, every foreign base, every new technology adds another layer of weight to a system already cracking beneath its own ambitions. The tragedy is that Americans believe this guarantees security, but security built on debt is an illusion. It's a castle made of sand, impressive until the tide comes in. Rome's generals couldn't save their empire when the money ran out. America's admirals and generals won't be able to either. And here's the haunting truth. No one ever tells an empire to stop. There's no warning bell, no moment of clarity. Expansion feels like destiny until it becomes destruction. The people cheer their armies, the leaders promise safety, and the treasury quietly empties. So ask yourself, how long can a nation spend its future to protect its past? How long before defense becomes the very thing that destroys it? Rome fell when it realized too late that it couldn't afford to be everywhere. America, with its global footprint and trillion-dollar obligations, is walking the same line, just with jet engines instead of legions. Every empire tells itself it's different. Every empire believes its strength makes it safe. But history whispers otherwise. The empire that tries to guard the world eventually loses its own. In the end, Rome didn't fall because it was invaded. It fell because its people stopped caring. They were comfortable, distracted, and entertained into silence. While the walls cracked and the treasury emptied, citizens filled the arenas to watch gladiators fight and laughed through chariot races. Their leaders had discovered the perfect formula for control: bread and circuses. Feed the people, amuse the people, keep them docile, and you can rule forever. A poet Juvenal wrote about it around 140 AD, how Rome's citizens had traded political power for free food and constant entertainment. Give them bread and circuses, he said, and they will never revolt. It was true. While the Senate schemed and the emperors devalued the currency, the crowds roared for blood, blissfully unaware that their empire was hollowing out from within. It didn't matter that taxes soared or that corruption spread, so long as the amphitheater stayed open and the grain kept flowing. But the genius of the system wasn't just distraction. It was the illusion of choice. Romans could cheer, gamble, shout, and pick their favorite gladiators, all while believing they were free. Yet none of it changed the direction of the empire. The spectacle replaced substance. The people were entertained into obedience. Now, fast forward to today. We don't have colosseums made of stone. We have screens. Endless, glowing, addictive screens. The new gladiators aren't warriors. They're influencers, celebrities, and talking heads. And the new circuses? They're everywhere. Scrolling feeds, streaming platforms, sports, politics as entertainment, outrage disguised as news. Every minute you scroll, every video you binge, every argument you get pulled into online, it's all part of the same modern spectacle. The average American spends over 7 hours a day looking at screens. 7 hours every single day. Not working, not creating, just consuming. It's the same trade Rome's citizens made, just dressed in pixels instead of marble. And when the economy wobbles, when anxiety starts to rise, the modern empire knows exactly what to do. They hand out stimulus checks, extend credit, and flood the feeds with distractions. Keep everyone comfortable enough, entertained enough, and no one asks the real questions. Remember 2020, when fear was at its peak, and governments all over the world printed trillions of dollars to save the economy? It worked, for a while. But that money didn't fix anything. It simply numbed the pain. Bread and circuses, reborn in digital form. A few dollars to quiet the panic. A constant stream of content to drown out the unease. And here's the chilling part. Most people don't even realize it's happening. They think they're informed because they scroll through headlines. They think they're connected because they comment and share. But in truth, they're trapped in a loop of noise designed to keep them too distracted to notice the system decaying beneath their feet. The Roman crowds never questioned why their grain was free or why their empire was faltering. They were too busy cheering the next fight. And today, we rarely question why the cost of living keeps climbing, while our paychecks don't. We're too busy streaming, scrolling, debating which celebrity said what. It's not stupidity, it's strategy. Distraction has become the most powerful form of control in human history. Because a distracted population doesn't demand reform, it doesn't challenge power, it doesn't prepare for what's coming. It just keeps scrolling as the walls start to crack. Rome's rulers understood that. So do ours. The result? A society that's comfortable but hollow, entertained but exhausted. A population that mistakes noise for knowledge and comfort for control. The Romans lost their freedom cheering from the stands. We're losing ours staring at screens. The Colosseum never closed, it just went online. Collapse never looks like collapse when you're living through it. It doesn't begin with explosions or invasions. It begins with denial. Late Rome was filled with people who believed the empire would last forever. Every sign of decay was brushed off as temporary. Every crisis was under control. Even as trade slowed, prices soared, and enemies pressed at the borders, Romans told themselves the same comforting lie. We are different. We are Rome. We are eternal. For centuries, that illusion held, right up until it didn't. The fall didn't come overnight. It was a slow, grinding decay that stretched across generations. People were born, lived, and died without ever realizing they were living through the empire's unraveling. The streets still bustled. The games still dazzled. The markets still opened every morning. From the outside, life looked normal, but the foundation, the economy, the currency, the unity, was already rotting beneath their feet. Then one day, it all broke at once. What seemed impossible for centuries happened in a single lifetime. The slow burn became a free fall. History always moves that way, gradually, then suddenly. And now, that same slow-motion collapse is playing out again, just wearing modern clothes. The dollar, once as trusted as Rome's silver denarius, is showing cracks. Nations once loyal to it are quietly moving away, trading in yuan, rubles, and even digital currencies to escape America's dominance. For the first time in modern history, the global system is beginning to question the very thing that makes the United States powerful: trust in its money. That's not just economics, it's psychology. It's faith. Rome's citizens believed their currency was unshakable until the day merchants refused to accept it. The same way the world believes the dollar is eternal until one day it isn't. And once that trust fractures, it doesn't mend. It vanishes. Meanwhile, inside the empire, something else is breaking. Unity. Late Rome was a nation divided by class, wealth, and resentment. The rich retreated into luxury while the poor grew restless. Sound familiar? In America today, that divide is widening. Half the country can't afford an unexpected expense. Cities crumble while elites hoard record profits. People talk about politics like sports teams, cheering their side while the system that feeds both continues to rot. But maybe the most dangerous parallel isn't economic or political, it's emotional. Rome drowned itself in distraction. We drown ourselves in data. Our empire citizens don't line up for gladiator games. They scroll through endless feeds, fighting digital battles that change nothing. Every notification, every viral outrage, every breaking news alert keeps us occupied while the real collapse continues quietly in the background. And here's what makes it worse. Everything now moves faster. In Rome's time, news took weeks to travel. Decisions rippled slowly through society. Today, information moves at the speed of light. Markets crash in seconds. Narratives shift overnight. A tweet can move billions. The mechanisms of collapse that once took centuries can now unfold in years or months. But the denial remains the same. We tell ourselves America is too powerful to fail, too innovative, too exceptional. Just like Rome told itself it was favored by the gods. Yet history doesn't care about confidence. It only cares about math, about trust, about time. And time always runs out. If you listen closely, you can hear the same echoes. The inflation, the overextension, the apathy, the arrogance. The same ingredients, just reheated in a modern kitchen. The empire's slow burn has already begun. It's just disguised as normal life. Every empire believes it has more time than it really does. Rome thought it had centuries. America might have decades. Because in a world this fast, decline doesn't creep, it accelerates. Rome's fall took generations. Ours might fit neatly inside a lifetime. The slow burn is already here. You just have to stop scrolling long enough to see the smoke. When empires crumble, not everyone falls with them. History never collapses evenly. It cracks along the fault lines of awareness. In Rome, some people saw the writing on the wall long before the final collapse. They sold their estates in the cities, bought farmland, stored grain, invested in real assets like gold and livestock. When the system finally buckled, they didn't vanish. They adapted. But most Romans didn't. They clung to faith in the empire, trusted the promises of leaders who swore things would return to normal. They waited for recovery that never came, holding coins that had turned to dust in their hands. That's the uncomfortable truth about every collapse. It feels impossible until it's already over. And by then, the people who ignored the signs are the ones who pay the price. Rome's fall wasn't just a story about politics or war. It was a story about preparation versus denial. The people who prepared survived the dark ages that followed. The people who didn't became the cautionary tale. Now here we are again. Different century, same pattern. The money is losing value. The debt is spiraling. The empire is stretched too thin. The distractions are endless. And most people are too busy watching, scrolling, or arguing to notice the ground shifting beneath them. We've mistaken comfort for security. But they're not the same thing. Comfort fades overnight. Security has to be built. And that's where your power lies. You can't stop the collapse of a system this massive, but you can refuse to be destroyed by it. You can build your own foundation, one that doesn't depend on fragile promises. Rome's survivors didn't wait for permission to act. They focused on what would still hold value when everything else failed. Land, food, tools, community, and skill. They created small, self-reliant networks that could withstand chaos. The same principle applies now. The dollar may weaken, markets may crash, technology may distract us until the last second, but real value doesn't vanish. The ability to create, to repair, to grow, to trade, to think critically, those are the assets that outlast any empire. When trust disappears from the system, the only currency left is what you can do, what you can hold, and who you can rely on. It's not about fear, it's about foresight. History doesn't reward panic, it rewards preparation. The fall of Rome ended a world, but it also began another. Those who adapted became the builders of what came next. The same will be true now. The end of one era always becomes the opportunity of another for those who are ready. And maybe that's the lesson hidden inside every collapse. You can't save the empire, but you can save yourself. You can choose awareness over distraction, value over illusion, action over denial. The moment you see the pattern, you're already ahead of most of the world. because the truth is simple and haunting. The script hasn't changed. Only the names and dates have. The same arrogance, the same decay, the same cycle playing out again, only faster this time. The question isn't if it ends. It's whether you'll be ready when it does. Rome thought it was eternal. So did every empire after it. Now it's our turn in the story. The only difference between those who fall and those who endure is who paid attention before the final act began. If this made you see things differently, subscribe, because the next chapter is already being written, and you'll want to know how it ends.